Sage Wonder here. And this Vinnie Paul thing it's like hitting some weird buttons with me. This whole Pantera thing. And I realize now that I blocked out that entire portion of my memory. That the only thing that I retained down through time about my memory of my time with Pantera was that little story I first told a couple months ago about how I first met them. But my time with Rita and with Paul, with Vinnie Paul, and with Daryl and the band, it was really hard for me, you know. When Vinnie Paul told me I had to leave and I couldn't hang out with them, I was 2,200 miles away from any friends or family. I just, right before that, lost my best friend since early in high school. He ditched me and went on an adventure. And I didn't have anybody. And the way that I lucked into that group, I was so lucky to have found them. And they did accept me even though I was so different. And I realized now I was in love with her. I was in love with Rita. And it wasn't right. And she went on to have a great life with Daryl. But, yeah, I think I blocked all that out because it was so hard. I remember they were my only friends. And when I drove away from there, I cried like a baby all the way home. And that was one of the hardest winters of my life because I didn't have anybody. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. I remember sitting out and watching Lake Grapevine up in Texas, you know, just sitting on the bank of Lake Grapevine. And that's where I spent that whole winter, all my extra time when I wasn't working my 2 jobs. Wow. I'm sorry, I just had to vent about that. It feels better that I talked about it. But have you ever had a memory that you feel like you just blocked out? For there to be so much detail there that I can't believe I forgot it. And I had to go back and watch documentaries to trigger those feelings. And when I triggered those memories, those feelings came back like they were just brand new, man. Like, why am I crying over somebody that I just knew for a few months when I was 17? And I think it's because my life was so hard when that happened. And it's a good thing Vinnie Paul handled me with kid gloves. I might have lost it because that was one of the hardest winters of my life. That after I was kind of banished from the Pantera group of friends, that winter, there's a lot of holes in my memory from that time. Because it was within a year of that time, I almost starved to death in Dallas-Fort Worth, surrounded by a city full of people. I sat right there amongst them and went down to 165 pounds. Which for a man that's 6'1" is not very, that's very thin for a guy who's big framed and broad shouldered. I was rail thin, you could see every rib. It was the hardest time of my life, and I finally was able